Thought I'd do a little bit on other water-based mediums. So talk a little bit about line and wash and gouache, or using white with watercolouring. So that's the idea for today. I'll do a couple of quick demos, and I've also brought a few examples. So my particular take on line and wash is I tend to just use fine liner pens and grey pens basically. Quite a lot of people like to use like a black line and then put some colour with it. So that's the traditional way of doing line and wash. And I think that can work really quite nicely, particularly things like architectural subjects, maybe something like this. There's a couple of different pens you could use, so I'll just try these out here. So what I use is one of these water and vaporproof pigment ink fine liner pens. So this one is called Unipin, but there's lots of different makes you could use. So the idea with this is you can pop your lines down. So if I was going to draw something like this, I can get some lines, and then that will dry quite quickly, and I could very quickly then, if I wanted to, just pop some wash all over that, and the lines will stay put. So that's the nice thing about a waterproof pen. You can. So I've got friends who like to draw with more of a water-soluble pen. Sometimes, one of my friends draws with like a fountain pen. So this is similar, like a rollerball pen would be similar to a fountain pen. So it's drawing this car, say. So the thing with this is it's not going to be waterproof, but you could use that as a feature of your drawing. So again, just with pen lines, you can kind of soften these lines out and make them bleed in, or you could go through a line and soften it out. So you'll get a different sort of effect, and you could effectively do a wash, a wash drawing, perhaps just just using the ink out of the pen. You could turn that into some sort of wash drawing. So that could be a very quick sketching medium type pen. Not really tried that myself, but I've seen other people do that, and that can be quite effective. The other kind of pens that you can get are like the permanent marker type pens. So these are solvent based. So this was just out of a very cheap set. This can give you a nice, definite, strong line, and this one's also got a chisel. So this could be quite good for sketching and blocking in. I've been experimenting a little bit with these pens lately. The only thing with these, and these will be waterproof, as you can see, that won't bleed. It almost sort of resists the water actually. It's almost like a little bit oily and leaves like a little shadow. But what these will do is they'll come through to the other side. So if you want to draw with that, you really I shouldn't put the watercolour paper there. You want a bit of scrap paper behind just to absorb all that. But again, I know artists that quite like this quality. And what they tend to do is it almost sort of bleeds at the beginning and the end of the line. Just if you hold it, so it'll kind of bleed into the paper, so you get this almost like dot to dot effect. So some people like that. So that's another kind of pen you can use. So with my line and wash type thing. So this was a quick sketch on the train yesterday. I've told you before. So this is just a fine liner pen and these Tombow pens. And for me, this is like the quickest, most instant sketching medium available that I've discovered. I can very quickly get some lines down, whatever it might be. These folk just sitting here, and I can just very quickly get some tones sort of in place. And to me, it just animates it. It just brings it to life, just a little bit of tone here and there. So I use three pens. I mostly use these two. So like a pale grey, a slightly darker grey. But I've also got this one that's a really dark grey that really effectively looks like black. So they're the three that I use. I just keep those with me, and then I've got something to work with. So that would be something like that. That's all kind of like those pens. This sketch, I think I probably just went straight in with the Tombow pens. I don't think there are any fine lines in that. So this is more of a tonal sketch, just with tone. And then I add a bit of pastel pencil, just bring out highlights. That's that. So that's, and the other kinds of ink you can get, like the bottles of fluid ink, and get some lovely effects with those. I don't tend to use them because I guess it's such a mess with them. It just goes everywhere and they glue themselves stuck. But yeah, probably would be quite nice to actually spend a bit of time and go out and explore those. So the dipper pens, you can also then thin the ink down and get lighter and darker lines and areas of wash. So I think there's quite a lot of potential with the box of ink. Nice thing to experiment with, perhaps we'll do that a little bit later on in the year. But I've really just brought the things that are very portable and very easy to use. With these sort of pens, I can just literally use them pretty much anywhere. So that's what I like about them. That's those sketching pens. A little bit about gouache. So gouache is really, I mean, you can buy paints that say gouache on them. I don't know if they've got them. They're effectively an opaque watercolour. So I think they might be used quite a bit in design for flat-looking pictures and things like that. But really, artists have used opaque watercolours as well as transparent watercolours for a long time. I've got my Turner book somewhere, I've got to get that out, but Turner used to do, quite a few of his watercolours were on like a pale blue paper, and then he put transparent washes and then maybe add bits of white in. So that's effectively what gouache is, or what they call body colour. It's basically using some white paint along with your transparent paint. So I've got a few, I mean that was a sketch I did, you know, and I quite like them on the brown paper too. I like a tone paper because the whites really pop out then. We've got some more in there. And they, you know, I find them quite nice for that sort of instant sketching. That's one I did in the pub a long time, a few years ago. This was a lockdown one where we're doing like a Zoom call, Zoom sketching session with a little sketching group. But we used to go out, but we couldn't, so we did lockdown sessions. So we just painted each other on the Zoom. That one came out quite nicely. So with that sort of paint, sometimes I'll draw it out with pencil first. I'll put a little bit on, I won't bother with that. I'll put a little bit on here. Sometimes, yeah, as I say, you could use some pencil first, but quite often, or pen first, sometimes use the pens first. I quite like to just go straight in with the paint, to be honest. I think that can be quite nice. So if it was something like this, I think I've got all the right brushes, but sort of these pale scenes here. Right. So I basically just use my watercolour palette and then just squeeze out a little bit of white. So this area here, a bit of white mixed in with some terracotta colours, and then literally just kind of draw with a brush. It's quite nice to just use that. So that could be this part here. There's a little bit in the shadow, so it goes slightly darker. And I know quite a lot of people are quite nervous about drawing with brushes, so this is quite a nice way, because it's just paper. It's quite a nice way of just building your confidence of drawing with a brush, really. And then go some darker areas, kind of get maybe the roof lines in, a bit like that. A few windows. That could go darker still. And very quickly, you've got a kind of coloured sketch. So, the advantage of this over oil painting is that it's going to dry quite quickly. So that could dry, and then you can overpaint. So that's quite nice. It comes out a bit chalky, so it's not going to be as rich as an oil painting. But for quick sketches, you know, you can work this in sketchbooks. That can be quite nice. And it's also, you can kind of wash it out, which is good. Let's just do a darker area. So whereas with traditional watercolour, you've got to be really careful about preserving the white of the paper. This won't take you know, tons of work, but you can do a reasonable amount of kind of, let me get some areas in here, sort of darker areas. It's very quick to just kind of pop those areas in. That's going a little bit darker still. This isn't like watercolour paper, it will cockle a bit, it's not too thin. But that I can sort of lift areas out, just kind of lighten areas. Or once it's dried, I can even wash areas away and then overpaint it. It won't be as noticeable as, say, a watercolour would. It won't look quite as overworked. And so for me, this is a very enjoyable way of getting some colour down very quickly. It's not going to, if I was using pastels in my sketchbook, that's going to smudge quite easily. This will stay put, so definitely a nice sketching medium. I was thinking next week, talk a bit about sketchbooks. So if you've got sketchbooks, please bring them in and let's have a little share and see what we've all been doing.
That's scary.
There you go. I know Jan's got loads of sketchbooks. So, and you know, I'll bring some of mine in. We can just share what we do. I'll also, it's probably not so relevant for this group, but I'll do a recap on colour mixing. So if anybody wants that, but that I know I've done that loads and loads of times. But if you want a kind of colour mixing recap, certainly for the beginners group, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Yeah, so that'll be the topics I'll cover next week. Is that key? Any questions or all good? Okay, right.